وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون اتخذ من دونه آلهة أن يردنا الرحمن بضر لا تغن عنا شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إن إذا لفي ضلال مبين أني آمنت بربكم فاسمعوني قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون إنهم إليهم ليرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها واخرجنا منها حبا فمنها يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمرها وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منها النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازلا حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم إن حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشاء نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم انفقوا مما رزقكم الله فقال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم في الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون وإن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم لعدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسناهم على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيئا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين. أولم يروا إنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم يبصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان إنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر أخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منها توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلقوا مثلهم بلى وهو خلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. صدق الله عليه العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. رحب الله من قرأ سورة الفاتحة قبلها الصلاة على محمد وآل بيت محمد.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات. ہے بابا تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے بابا تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے کیسے دروازہ ہٹاؤں کیسے محسن کو بچاؤں سانس سینے میں رکی ہے تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے تیری امت نے بنا دی ہے یہ حالت بابا کوئی پسلی بھی نہیں میری سلامت بابا سانس لیتی ہوں میں جس دم رکنے لگتا ہے میرا دم صرف مرنے کی کمی ہے تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے کبھی دربار میں پیشی کو بلاتے ہیں ہمیں کبھی دروازے پہ آیا کہ ستاتے ہیں ہمیں میرے یہ پھول سے بچے پوچھتے ہیں یہی مجھ سے کیا خطا ہم سے ہوئی ہے تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے جب سے حسنین کے بابا سے سنا ہے یہ کلام کہ مجھ کو اب کوئی مدینے میں نہیں کرتا سلام تب سے یہ حال ہے میرا اپنا غم بھول کے بابا بس مجھے فکر علی ہے تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے ہاتھ میں جس کے میرا ہاتھ دیا تھا تم نے کہہ کے من کن تو جسے مولا کہا تھا تم نے میں نے ہر مور پہ بابا ساتھ اس کا ہے نبھایا ہاں میرا جرم یہی ہے تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے گزری 18 برس میں ہی وہ مجھ پر بابا سن میرا لگتا ہے فضا کے برابر بابا خود گواہی تمہیں دے گی میری بالوں کی سفیدی وہ جفا مجھ پہ ہوئی ہے تیری زہرا پہ مصیبت کی گری ہے شرم آتی ہے بلا تم کو बताऊं कैसे ये तमाचों के निशान तुमको दिखाऊं कैसे तुम न पहचान सकोगे देख कर मुझको कहोगे क्या मेरी ज़ारा यही है तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की गरी है हाय बाबा तेरी ज़हरा पे मुसीबत की गरी है पर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Before I invite our next reciter, if I could ask everyone to make a bit of an effort and come forward with 3 loud salawats. We're few in numbers, but I'm sure we could do a better salawat than that. So with a louder salawat, Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. If I can ask Brother Muhammad Abbas Jafar to come recite some poetry for us.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Firstly, thank you to the organizers of this majlis for the invite. I pray for their continued success. Inshallah, this is not the last of the majalis that take place in this center, that there are many more. I pray that Bibi Fatima, salamullahi alayha, gives them and all of you shafa, inshallah. The poem I'm reciting today is called The Tragedies of Fatima. And we'll begin with a Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. One, childhood. In the valley of Abu Talib, hands and knees on the earth, is where a young Zahra could be seen and be heard, searching for food in the leaves and the dirt. You see, first, the Quraysh had tried everything to destroy Islam, from temptation and persuasion to causing the Muslims harm, but soon they realized that the Ummah's fate lay in Abu Talib's palm. After a long while, the sanctions were lifted and the exile ended. Not once did Khadija falter, with a smile defended her family all the while so splendid, until her time had ended. She spent every single cent, every dirham given with intent to buy food and clothes and water for her family, her daughter, so that when death finally caught her, gnawed her body and clawed her soul, the Queen of Arabia left this world without a single piece of gold, without a shroud, so the Prophet gave his cloak. Without a doubt, he would have even made a dome, for Khadija was his life and soul. And now, see his eyes behold Fatima. Fatima now motherless. Fatima who cried with shuddered breaths, who didn't even have time to recover lest her world was rocked by another death, the Prophet. And she was Abiha, so it was like losing a son as well as a father. For Zahra it was disaster after disaster, and the tears rolled down her cheeks faster and faster, until Nabi whispered in her ear, and for the first time Zahra let out laughter. You will join me soon, princess, but there'll be no happy ever after. no happy ever after. 2. Fadak. Even in those early days, 2 factions had been created. A group who adored Ali and a group who hated. A group who went for Nabi, who wept for Nabi, and a group in Saqifa who debated. But when the dust abated and the Khalifa instated, it's in the house of Zahra that the Shia of Ali congregated. And the self-proclaimed kings came asking for bay'ah 4 times. The Prophet never forced anyone, but for these thieves it was do or die, because Ali's allegiance would justify their war crimes. But Ali was inside compiling the Quran and needed more time. So Mawla told them to leave. He'd drawn lines. Ya Ali, prepare to see a storm rise right before your eyes. And so just like they stole Ali's haqq, one decided to steal Fadak. The will of Muhammad was just like that, cut up. And when he quoted so-called hadith that he'd dug up, Fatima quoted the Quran and made him shut up. Fadak wasn't inheritance because it was gifted. And Ali and Ayman are my witness. I am my father's heir and Fadak's my business. But they knew that if they returned Fadak today, that they'd have to return the Khilafah tomorrow. So instead they filled Ali Muhammad with sorrow. Yet Fatima in the footsteps of her father would follow. Walked through Medina like Nabi on the outside, but inside she was hollow. Telling the people that her and her husband's rights were stolen, not borrowed, and she gave the greatest of sermons. Her voice, just like Nabi's, from behind the veil of the curtain, she told every single person the true version of history. She made sure they had no doubts. But the kingmakers came again to her house, this time with fire in their eyes and ire on their breath, and that's the first time the liar made a threat: retire or there's death. With fire they'd be met, one of them adding arson to his theft. But Ali refused and didn't get what they required, so they left. Didn't get what they desired, so they left. 3. The door. And then came a 3rd visit, and after that a 4th. And this time they brought with them some force. The 2 of them this time had support. Some men held swords and others a brightly burning torch. Again, for bay'ah they did call, but again Mawla did ignore. So this time they raised their swords up and roared, dropped their torches to the floor. Flames raised up, scorching up the door, the same door that Jibreel would enter with a knock, the same door that had sole access to the mosque, the same door behind which Zahra now stood seething, the same door that was thrust back as she was leaving, the same door that pressed her against the wall, so she wasn't standing but kneeling. She looked down and saw she was bleeding. Fizza, come quick, Mohsin's gone and I'll never get to see him. Meet him, hug him, feed him. Zahra inhales but struggles breathing. Her rib is broken and the pain is searing. Somewhere nearby are her children screaming. But Zahra was not pleading. No, she wouldn't concede. Stands up, barely able to walk, but against the wall she leans. This is the daughter of Muhammad, and her children she leads. Out of the house as the flames are lashing at her feet, and in the doorway one of them she meets. He raises his hand, slaps the daughter of Muhammad right across her cheek. The face of Zahra slapped by the hand of the weak, and Zainab looks on and weeps as the smoke hooks on and seeps into her lungs that struggle to breathe. In this most searing of heats, the heat's intense, but Zainab take in its scent, because today is a door but tomorrow will be tense. And Hasnain gaze on and cry as their father lays on his side, spear to his neck, his hands have been tied, spear to his neck, rage burning inside. But patience is a virtue, and Ali has an abundant supply. So he watches his house burn and the smoke start to rise, watches his wife step into the night, watches her oppressors with revenge in his eyes, with revenge in his eyes. 4. Death. Now if a Muslim says salam, it's wajib for us to reply it. So a few days later, one of them approached Zahra's house and tried it. This is a completely sahih hadith, so nobody can deny it. He said, Salam ya bint Rasul, but Zahra stayed quiet. And then he wept, because he had heard it said from none other than the Holy Prophet that whoever angers Fatima angers me, and whoever angers me angers Allah. And he wished for the forgiveness of Zahra, but there was another. There was another who told him not to worry, for Fatima is just a woman. And this woman spent her remaining few days in prostration, unable to recover from her home's invasion, watching the crumbling of her father's nation, until one day she told Fizza and Ayman to feed her children while she was praying. But Hussein ran in and started playing with his mother, but she wasn't waking. Ummi, why aren't you waking? And Fizza tried to take him, but Zahra's arms outstretched pulled her son to her chest. Against her frail frame he was pressed, and he cried, and he cried, and he cried, until there were no tears left. Then in came Haydar. Lifted Zahra, but found it harder than lifting Khaybar, even though he'd never felt a body frailer. And when it was time for Ghusl, Ali did break, sat in a corner, and the lion of Allah did shake. For he loved Zahra more than the stars in space, but he just seen her rib cage, saw the bones displaced, and when his sobs did fade, Ali stood up, filled with rage. In Medina, Zahra's cries had been replaced with wails from the people whose tears stained their face. At the house of Ali, the question was now raised, when will Fatima's burial take place? Al-Zahra stepped out and said, it's been delayed. That night, Amir al-Mu'mineen wrapped his wife in a shroud, dug 40 holes in the ground, ensured that Zahra's grave couldn't be found. There wasn't a crowd. It was her request that certain people weren't allowed to be present. Even in her death, Zahra set down a tenant. Who is the truthful? Who is unpleasant? The next day, one realized Zahra had been buried without his attendants. Said he'd do everything in his power. Dig up Medina to find Nabi's flower, but Mawla withdrew his sword, and the coward. The lion of Allah was ready to devour if anyone touches a single rock. If anyone touches a single rock, blood will flow and heads will drop. Don't be shocked. The amana has been returned to Rasulullah. So now Ali couldn't be stopped. Ali couldn't be stopped. 5. Karbala. From Shib Abu Talib and Saqifa to the deaths of Nabi and Khadija, Fadak being stolen and her rib being fractured, to a cheek left swollen and Ali being captured, a child that was lost, and a burning home to a burial kept secret, and a grave with no dome. Zahra's tragedies were many, but they didn't stop there. She may have died, but they continued long after. Mahlan mahla yabna Zahra. Fatima hears her daughter call to her master, and Hussein faces Zainab. Behind him, an abyss, a brother and sister sharing a final moment of bliss. And just like Zahra requested, Zainab gives Hussein a kiss. One on his neck before the dagger does, one on his chest before it turns to dust. And as Hussein rides out into the battlefield, Zahra stands proudly. But as the enemy surround her son, she raises her hands devoutly. A sea of arrows pours down and Hussein is drowning. How many spears can one body hold? There's no use in counting. And the sticks and stones ground him. Zahra's heart is pounding, for on one side, atop a hill, stands her daughter Zainab. On the other, in a ditch, lies Hussein. Hussein, please wake up. Shimmer is coming, my son. Please do wake. But it's too late. The dagger is in his hand, and it's already had its first taste. And as Hussein's blood falls, this very land shakes. It's what makes Karbala's land great. Sand great. But Zahra can't stand straight, and she cries out. Zahra cries for Karbala, a land that jarred when the hardest of hearts left the son of Abu Turab battered and scarred, bones shattered in half, arrows stabbed through his heart, a dagger on his throat like a shard. Zahra cries for Hussein and the hooves that trampled him. She hears a crack, recognizes it as another fractured rib. Sajjad staggers backward, soon they capture him. Chains leaving black and blue marks on dappled skin. Zahra cries for the scent of fire and smoke, for children trying not to cry or to choke. She remembers her own children as the embers rose around them, higher than most, and now the tents, like her door, burned to cinders. Hussein was their world, and now that world is tinder. Zahra cries for the sound of a slap, holds her own cheek, for it brings memories back. But there's one person for whom she's most restless. One person for whom she's most restless. She cries for a body that lays lonely, headless, for the spear upon which his blessed head rests, for his broken teeth on chest sets. Zahra is here today. Zahra is here now, so show her palm prints on red chests. Show her that we are Husseini, Hassani, Muhammadi, Alawi, Madani, Hashimi. But tonight, ya Shia, we are Fatimi. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
فلحظة نصلي على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي بفاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها وسر المستودع فيها عجل فرج مهديها. Brothers, sisters, elders, scholars, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I was having a conversation with my daughter about 2 nights ago. I took her to a majlis and she told me, why is everyone crying? I didn't know how to explain it in words that she can understand. This was my youngest one. She's only 5 years old. But I tried to explain as much as I can. And when I did, I remembered, if my daughter is this young, you know, Hassan Hussein was there to witness what happened to their mother. And so much things came to thought. And that thought came back in the car journey as I was driving to the center. And I just thought, how great is Fatima that we are her Shia? Many Muslims around the world claim, you know, we love the Ahlul Bayt. We love Rasulullah. We honor his daughter Fatima. But we were chosen to be here today. And for this, let's have a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Rasulullah went on to say, do not hurt Fatima. And by Allah, after you left, they angered Fatima. Rasulullah, Rasulullah went on to say, do not hurt Fatima. And by Allah, and by Allah, after you left they angered Fatima. How is it that her ribs were broken? How is it that her rights were stolen? How is it that her ribs were broken? How is it that her rights were stolen? How is it that Zahra was taken at a young age? Ya Zahra, they killed Zahra, they killed Zahra, hypocrites who wanted to see her dead. They killed Zahra, they killed Zahra, hypocrites who wanted to see her dead. Who killed Zahra? Who killed Zahra? Companions who claimed they loved Muhammad. Companions who claimed they loved Muhammad. Fatima, 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 Ya Zahra. We are all lovers of Lady Fatima. I need everyone to inshallah participate with your voices. Fatima, 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 Ya Zahra. Let me hear your voices. Fatima, 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 Ya Zahra. Louder, louder. Fatima, 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 Zahra. Peace be upon the ribs that were crushed by the door. Peace be upon the ribs that were crushed by the door. Peace be on the pure blood that's scattered on the floor. Fatima, 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 Ya Zahra. Fatima, 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 Ya Zahra. Curse be upon those whose rights they took away. Curse be upon those who her rights they would ignore. Curse be upon the hand that would push Zahra's door. Curse be upon those who her rights they would ignore. Curse be upon the hand that pushed Fatima's door. Fatima, 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 Ya Zahra. Tyrants, they feared her name. Zahra, Lady of Heaven, they killed her with no shame. Zahra, leader of women, tyrants, they feared her name. Zahra, we're your servants, and servants we remain. Zahra, we're your servants, and servants we remain. Fatima, 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 ya Zahra. Fatima, Fatima, ya Zahra. Fatima, 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 ya Zahra. When will we get to see a shrine and golden dome? When will we get to see a shrine and golden dome? When will we get to call Zahra's grave our home? When will we get to see a shrine and golden dome? When will we get to call Zahra's grave our home? When will we get to go to the grave that's all alone? When will we get to go to the grave that's alone? Fatima, 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 ya Zahra. Fatima, 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 ya Zahra. صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Just on behalf of Al-Zahra Youth, I'd like to thank all our reciters today, Sheikh who's going to be reciting Majlis, and we have Sayyid Muhammad Rizvi with us today, so please recite a loud salawat for all of them. My announcements are very brief. Head of Youth, Brother Neil, couldn't be with us today, but he has asked for me to deliver a message. If you would like to be part of his youth team in any capacity, volunteer, helping with programs or in the committee, please get in touch with Brother Neil, myself, or any EC member. Please recite a loud salawat. Before I invite Sheikh Ali Hadi, I'll just, inspired by the brothers, if you allow me to recite one poem, 4 verses. Brandishing their torches, they stood outside her home. Come out, plead the allegiance, we want power for our own. The assailants pounded even harder, and against the door they thrust. Between the wall and entrance, our flower, she was crushed. The assault, it wasn't over, of that lady, mild and meek. The enemies of her husband struck her hard across the cheek. She cried out loud, "Oh Father, they snapped the stem of your bud." She miscarried her unborn infant and fainted in her blood. Without any further delay, if I could ask Sheikh Ali Hadi to come and recite Majalis for us. Allahumma salli.
التحيات والإكرام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الهداة المهديين، وصلى على وصي رسول رب العالمين أمير المؤمنين مولانا علي بن أبي طالب. ولا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين حجة ابن الحسن روحي وأرواحنا لتراب مقدمه الفداء الذي بيمنه رزق الوراء وبوجوده ثبتت الأرض والسماء. اللهم صل على فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها بعدد ما أحاط به علمك. In the very beginning, we would like to pay our condolences to our 12th Imam, Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajuh Sharif, upon the Ayyam of Musibah, the nights of Fatimiyah, the nights of the martyrdom of Bibi Fatimah Al-Zahra, Salamullah Alayha, and alongside with that, condolences to all of the Mu'mineen and Mu'minat upon these painful and sad nights. We pray in the very beginning of this majlis that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the sake of Fatimah al-Zahra, allow us all to serve the path and serve the door of Fatimah al-Zahra salamullah alayha within inside of this dunya. Ya Allah, for the sake of Fatimah al-Zahra, we ask you to accept this majlis, accept this gathering in the best of acceptances. Ya Allah, for the sake of Fatimah al-Zahra, we ask you to allow us to receive the intercession of Fatimah al-Zahra salamullah alayha fi dunya wal akhirah. Recite a salawat all together, please. From the resources that are available to us within inside of our religion, the matter that comes to mind and the matter that we can achieve from our resources is that the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala categorizes worship and categorizes sins into different categories. There are different categories of worship, there are different categories of sinning. If we are able to recognize the most important segment of worship and the most important segment of obedience, we'll be able to recognize the duty of Bibi Salamullah Alayha within inside of this world. We need to understand that if Sayyida Salamullah Alayha, if she is the one who is the protector and the defender of wilayah, and she is saving Islam away from deviation, then what exactly are we understanding from her duty itself? This was the talk of my majlis today, inshallah. We'll be speaking about the duty of Sayyida Salamullah Alayha. But I would like to begin by speaking about the different categories that we have inside of Islam about worship and sinning. The first one that we all know about, the first dimension of ibadat and worship, is the individual ibadat that we have, the individual aspect of our worship between ourselves and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. An individual worship is the one that takes place between myself and God, between a mu'min and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is an obedience that takes place without the need of a congregation, without the need of a community. This happens between himself and God. For example, salah, for example, dua, dhikr, tasbih, right? These are things that take place between an individual and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the contrary to this, in contrast to this is individual sinning. Individual sins are those where one commits himself to the shaitan, where one commits himself to Satan himself. Individual ibadat is where one commits himself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But individual sinning is where one commits himself to the shaitan. And this can happen obviously without the need of a community, without the need of a gathering. It usually happens where somebody is alone, where somebody is in privacy. For example, somebody watches or listens to immoral content. Somebody abandons his salah. Somebody abandons his fasting. All right? So there are two categories of ibadat and there are two categories of sinning as we mentioned. These examples I'm giving over here, they are transactions between somebody and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Which is why when they say on the day of Qiyamah, when you will be presented with what your actions will be, it will almost be like your bank statement. Right? When you look at your bank statement, you'll realize that how many transactions you have, which you could have saved, which you could have spent in a better manner, right? And how many transactions that were legit within inside of your bank account. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says on the day of Qiyamah, your a'mal, that paper that will be presented to you, it will be the transactions you did between yourself and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whatever you committed to within inside of your life. However, we have a second category of worship and second category of sins. And this second aspect is more important than the individual one. It's the congregational aspect of worship, the congregational aspect of sinning. When we have a look at Islam, Islam is a congregational religion. It's not a religion that is related to individuality. Rather, it promotes congregation, it promotes a community, it promotes a group of people. The essence of this social worship that I'm going to speak about, it wholly depends on a collective unit. Without this collective unit, it's not possible for this worship to happen. Without a community, without a group of people, it's not possible for this to go ahead. So therefore, it's not related to somebody performing acts in isolation. It's not related to somebody performing ibadat in isolation. For example, Salatul Jama'ah. This has to happen with a group of people. Hajj, it has to happen with people, right? All of these matters, jihad, various parts of Islam, they have to happen within inside of a congregational form. They cannot happen without this congregation. On the other hand, on the contrary to this is social sinning, or sins that are related to a society, sins that are related towards an entire community. An entire community is performing this. Like Qawm Lut, for example. The nation of Lut, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down the adhab upon these people, they were performing this act of sin, this act of transgression against the boundaries of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in congregation. So it's possible that a society or a community as a whole is committing a sin as well. So social sins are related to those that are being committed socially, those that are being committed within inside of a community. The sins that are related to a society, they are the sins that are committed collectively, as I said. These are the ones that damage and harm a society. These are those that, similar to how acts of worship, they strengthen unity, they strengthen bonds between people. Social sinning, it goes ahead and destroys a community. Social sins go ahead and disrupt a unification between mu'mineen and mu'minat. And I'll give a few examples over here. For example, spreading falsehood, ghiba, rumors, lies, right? Accusing somebody of something within inside of a community. These become the reason towards a disunity between the mu'mineen. They do not encourage unity. They do not encourage brotherhood. Or we'll take another example. Some of the financial corruptions that we have within inside of communities, right, which lead towards the breakage of bonding between mu'mineen and mu'minat, bribery, fraudulent practices, riba, right, shortchanging people, hoarding, money laundering. All of these matters which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram for us, all of these matters that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made haram for us, they have made it for a reason. He's made it for an exact reason, so that we do not have disunity, we do not disperse between each other. So hence why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made certain acts of haram, certain acts of worship more valuable than individual acts itself. So as we mentioned, there are different categories of worship and there are different categories of sinning as well. So these, as I was speaking about those financial corruptions, they breed social corruption, they breed inequality, they breed injustice, which is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made this haram in the first place. So that you cannot go ahead and put your hand into haram. Therefore, social sins, just like social acts of worship, they are more weighty than individual acts of faith. And I'd like to add over here, just so that this matter can be clear and everybody can come to an understanding, as there are a lot of doubts and concerns within inside of our time, within inside of this zamana, within inside of this difficult and turbulent akhir al-zaman, we hear a lot of doubts and we hear a lot of shubahat, or we hear a lot of ikhtilafat about our deen, and we do not come clear. Social responsibility, dear mu'mineen, mu'minat, is exactly the reason to why there is a need for a religious government in the first place. Social responsibility is the reason to why we need it. Some may question, where is the legitimacy of a Shia government today? In the Akhir al-Zaman, we have within inside of our riwayat that, an Islamic government that belongs to a Shia country, that is false. It does not have any legitimacy. It has to be Imam al-Zaman himself who comes. It has to be the Imam himself who comes. What is the legitimacy? Where is the legitimacy itself? What they fail to understand is that Islam is not just about spiritual well-being. Islam is not just about individualism. Islam is not an individual-centric religion. Islam is about implementing social justice. Islam is about upholding moral integrity. Islam is about protecting the honor and the dignity of the mu'mineen and mu'minat. The argument that religion should be separate from politics is a way to escape, is a way to ignore moral guidance, is a way to ignore ethical leadership, which opens the door for self-interest, which opens the door for personal agendas, which opens the door for corruptions, allowing for fitna, allowing for evil to prevail. So from a Shia perspective, what I wanted to add over here is that religion is inseparable from the political scene, because the principles of justice, dear mu'minin mu'minat, the principles of morality and the social welfare, which are central to the religion, must be part of how an Islamic society is run in the first place. Which is why, just to make you all understand, a Shia alim is needed for a community. Every community requires an alim. Is that correct or no? Without an alim, a Shia community cannot function. Without a scholar being there, without a person who's leading there, it's not possible for a Shia community to run. If it were to be that religion and politics were a separate matter, then the day of Jummah would not have been such an important day. The day of Eid would not have been such an important day. Ramadan would not have been a space and a time where we call out against oppression, where we remember those who are in need. Therefore, Islam, dear mu'mineen, mu'minat, is a society that collectively serves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's a society that collectively worships Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just how the human being's body, just how the human body itself, it works to protect its vital parts. Similar to this, a deen, a religion that works within inside of a social manner, it works to protect the moral and the social and the ethical aspect of a society. Recite salawat all together, please. So we mentioned for the first category is the individuality part of Islam, the individual aspect, and then we mentioned the social aspect. The third type of ibadat that we have within inside of our deen is the one that is related to tariq, and that is a worship that is a historical type. What does it mean by a historical worship? I'd like to just mention this over here. Historical worship means that I perform an act where I become associated with the thawab of the Anbiya alayhimus salatu salam and the Imams. I perform an act within inside of my life that I become associated with the maqsad, with the mission or the hadaf of all of the Aimma Athhar alayhimus salatu salam. I become part of it. I become sharik within inside of their goals, within inside of their hadaf. With my personality, with my character, with my actions, through my lifestyle, I am working to serve the cause of the Aimma Athhar alayhimus salam within inside of my life. I am actively assisting the cause of the prophets and the imams. And I would like to relate this to the duty of Bibi Fatimiyah Al-Zahra salawatullahi wa salamu alayha. Recite salawat, please. But before I mention that, I would like to mention a very important point over here, that all of the Anbiya alayhimus salam, all of the A'imma Athar alayhimus salam, they worked towards a collective goal. They worked towards one mission, one hadaf. It's not like as if Nabi Adam alayhi salam has a different maqsad to that of our 12th Imam. All of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of the Anbiya alayhi salam, they work towards one collective goal. And what is that? أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتِ. Right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that the reason to why we had placed the Anbiya, the reason to why we have placed the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the selected ones from God in this dunya in the first place, is so that they can call people towards the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and disassociate themselves from those who are the taghut of this world, those people who have transgressed in this world. This is the hadaf of the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wasalam. So therefore we see that we have two forces over here in this world. Two forces that are opposing each other from the start of Tariq until the day of Qiyamah. Right? We have two opposing forces over here. One side is the side of the Anbiya alayhimus salam. One side is the path of the awliya alayhimus salatu salam. And one side is the opposing force, which is the force of the shaitan as well. The goal of this path, which is the path of the Anbiya alayhimus salam, is so that the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, divinity, can govern every facet of life. This is the hadaf of the Anbiya alayhimus salam. أَنِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتِ. So that one day Islam and the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can encompass every single facet of life. And on the opposite side to this, the opposition of the Anbiya alayhimus salam and the A'imma Athar alayhimus salam is a force which is working to go ahead to allow materialism and carnal desires and animalistic desires to encompass every facet of life. Which is why in the Quran we have two flags where you can represent with inside of your life. There are two flags that you can represent in this dunya, and there's no gray area. With inside of Ayatul Kursi, what do we read? What do we read in Ayatul Kursi that we repeat all the time? That is, Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu yukhrijuhum min al-dhulumati ila nur. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the wali. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the guardian of those who believe. Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu yukhrijuhum min al-dhulumati ila nur. He takes them out of the darkness and puts them into light. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا أَوْلِيَاؤُهُمُ الطَّاغُوتِ. And those people who disbelieve, those people who have turned their backs away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they also have a wali. They also have a guardian. They also have somebody that they stand for. They also have a cause. So therefore we don't have somebody in this dunya who is causeless. I cannot say that I sit in a gray area of Islam where I do not fall towards the right or towards the left. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says there are only two that you can represent. It's either the flag of haqq or it's either the flag of batil. These are the only two ways that you can go in this dunya. There's no gray area. Allahu waliyul ladhina amanu yukhrijuhum min adh-dhulumati ila an-nur walladhina kafaru awliyahum at-taghut. And I would like to just share a poetry of Farsi which will explain this really well for all of us. This poet, he says, two calls will arise in opposition. In which one will you stand prepared? One will call towards awakening and towards piety, and the other call will be the deceit of the wicked. There will be two calls in this dunya. There has always been two calls in this world. Until there was an Ibrahim, there was a Nimrud who stood against him. Until there was a Musa, there was a Fir'aun who stood against him. Until there was a Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. There was Abu Sufyan la'anatullah alayhi who stood against him. Until there was Amirul Mu'mineen, there was Muawiyah who stood against him. Until there was Bibi Salamullah alayha, there were the Khulafa who stood against the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Until there was Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam, there was Yazid. This movement or this battle between the two opposite forces has something that has been existing from the start of Tariq. Now going back to the historical worship part, going back to the ibadat that I can perform, where I can be associated with the thawab of the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wasalam, associated with the thawab of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. In the midst of this ongoing battle today, if I or if somebody successfully assists or helps in any form or fashion in establishing that which is haqq in the Akhir al-Zaman, or assists those who are promoting haqq within inside of this world, which naturally means to weaken falsehood, to weaken batil inside of this dunya, whatever they have done, be it as small as writing an article, they have associated themselves with the thawab of the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wasalam. They have associated themselves with the cause of the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wasalam. In Ziyarat Ashura, what do we read? What do we read in Ziyarat Ashura? فَيَا لَيْتَنَا كُنَّا مَعَكُمْ فَنَفُوزَ فَوْزًا عَظِيمًا. That how I wished to be there in Karbala, having a desire towards haqq, having a desire towards the front lines of truth is also important as well. Therefore, nobody can sit over here and say that in this zaman we are allowed to be neutral in any stance. So therefore, the third aspect, as I was speaking about historical worship, or that ibadat which contributes towards tariq, is an important dimension. I would like to narrate a story over here in Bihar al-Anwar. There's a man by the name of Muhyiddin Erbili. This man, he narrates within inside of this riwayah. He says that one day, me and my father, we were traveling towards Karbala, and on the way, we had stopped in a mawkib, we had stopped in a place to rest. Somebody had invited us, it was a Sayyid Alim, and he says that we had food, and this is in the riwayat of Bihar al-Anwar, I can give the reference as well. Muhyiddin Erbili, he says that we had food at this person's house, at this Sayyid Alim's house, and after we had food, we had rested for a while, we had laid down, and me and my father, we saw the Sayyid Alim as he was laying down, his amama had come off his head. And we saw that there was a major scar on his head. When this Sayyid Alim had awakened, we had questioned him that, where did you get this scar from? Sayyid, he replies back, he says that I got this scar from the Battle of Siffin. This, Muhyiddin Erbili, he says that centuries have passed by after the Battle of Siffin. How could it have been possible that you got this from the Battle of Siffin? I mean, we were in the 19th century. And he says that I have a story behind this that I would like to say. He says that once I was traveling to Najaf with a Nasibi, the Sayyid Alim, he says. I was traveling to Najaf with this Nasibi. The Nasibi did not know that I was a Shia, and I did not know that he was a Nasibi until we exchanged a few words. What did we say to each other? The Nasibi says to the Sayyid that, oh, how I wish that I was alive at the time of the Battle of Siffin. I would have covered my sword with the blood of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. This is what this Nasibi says. The Sayyid, he replies back in the defense of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. He says, if I was alive at the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, and you were there fighting Amir al-Mu'mineen, I would have covered my sword in your blood. So when they find out that they are enemies of each other, they start to fight. The Sayyid says that we fought until he pulled out a dagger, and I had fell unconscious after that. I did not know what happened. Either he stabbed me or he took my life away from me. At that point, I thought that my soul had left my body. Until the time where my eyes had opened, and I had saw that my enemy was fallen to the ground, and that there was Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam walking towards me. And Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he takes my head into his hands and he starts to wipe all of my injuries one by one. And then he tells this Sayyid Alim, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, according to his riwayat, he says that you will keep this scar on your forehead, and if anybody asks you, where did you get this scar from? You say that I got this whilst I was fighting with Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam in the Battle of Siffin. Therefore, there are certain ibadat, or there's a section of ibadat, a worship that can count towards history, that can count towards the tariq of Islam. As I said, we say in Ziyarat Ashura, Ya laytana kunna ma'akum fanafuza fawzan azima. Oh, how we wish to be with you. Just having that desire itself also counts towards this ibadah, towards this historical worship. There, in our riwayat, at the time of our fourth Imam, Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wassalam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. We have a riwayat by a man whose name is by a man whose name is Aba Khalid Kabuli. Aba Khalid, if you go into Kabul today, there's a research center that is named after this man as well. He was one of the close companions of our fourth Imam. He says, one day I went to the house of our fourth Imam, and I went inside and we started to exchange words about the Akhir al-Zaman. We were speaking about the final times. And then we started discussing about the 12th Imam. And our fourth Imam, he says to Aba Khalid, he says, Ya Aba Khalid, inna ahla zaman ghaybatihi, that the ones who will be living in the occultation of the 12th Imam, the ones who will be living in the Ghaybat al-Kubra, they are better than every single nation within inside of Tariq. This isn't something that is of less gravity. This isn't of something that is of less magnitude. Imam himself is saying, Inna ahla zaman ghaybatihi al-qa'iluna bi-imamatihi al-muntadhiruna li-dhuhurihi afdala ahla kulli zaman. There are certain traits that I would like to mention that the Imam had mentioned. First, the Imam says, Al-Qa'iluna bi-imamatihi, that they accept the imamat of the 12th Imam. They do not reject it. They do not doubt his existence. They do not question his imamat. Al-Qa'iluna bi-imamatihi. This is number one. Number two, Imam Sajjad says, Al-Muntadhiruna li-dhuhurihi, those who are proactive whilst awaiting the 12th Imam. This is the second condition. They do not become hopeless. They do not fear the zalimeen of the dunya. They are not scared. Rather, they are prepared to defend him in any chance. Afdala ahla kulli zamanin. Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu says they are better than every single nation in the tariq of Islam. And Imam, he gives the dalil why. Nahnu abna'u dalil at the end of the day. When we want to listen to the kalam of the ma'asumeen alayhimus salam, we do not wait and finish a sentence right there. Rather, the Imam, he's going to give you the dalil afterwards as well with what he says. If the Imam, he's going to say that the Ahl Akhir Zaman, they are the greatest of all nations, what is the reason to why? Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, he says very beautifully, and I'd like everyone to pay attention over here. Imam says, لأن الله تعالى أعطاهم من العقول والأفهام والمعرفة. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gifted the Akhir al-Zaman, the people who are living in Ghaybat al-Kubra, with what? With understanding, with insight, to such an extent. ما صارت به الغيبة عندهم بمنزلة المشاهدة. That through this ma'rifat and intellect, through this understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to them, the occultation of the 12th Imam will be exactly like as if he was present for them. Meaning their aqidah is so strong. Their aqidah is so strong that the occultation, that Imam is not present within inside of the society, but it's like as if he is present within inside of the society. That's the aqidah of the Akhir al-Zaman. That they live their lives in such a way where they feel like they understand, they know, they have yaqeen that the Imam is hadir, that he is present within inside of the societies. Somebody says that Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam has said this, I accept it. Somebody says that Imam Hussein alayhi salam has said this, I accept it. Nobody over here can ever claim that I saw the Ma'asum, I saw him say this, and I'm acting therefore. No. Whatever we have is from Usul al-Kafi. Whatever we have is from Bihar al-Anwar. Whatever we have is writings on pieces of paper, which is why Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, he says, أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُخْلِصُونَ حَقًّا. That these people are the mukhlisun. Why? Because their belief is as strong as those of the shuhada of Badr and the shuhada of Uhud, but they did not see the mu'ajizat of the Rasulullah. They did not see Shaqqul Qamar. They did not see the miracle of Angel Jibreel. Rather, their belief and their aqidah is based on writings on a piece of paper. أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُخْلِصُونَ حَقًّا. Imam Sajjad alayhi salam says that these people are truly the mukhlisun of this dunya. Now going back to the discussion and I'd like to summarize my majlis over here. The duty of Bibi Fatimah Al-Zahra salamullah alayha was to protect that force of haqq which we were speaking about, that force of truth versus the truth, force of falsehood, which starts from Nabi Adam alayhi salam, which will continue until the day of Qiyamah, so that the force of truth can be assisted and can be supported and strengthened until the day of Qiyamah. Bibi Salamullah alayha had stood up in her time. And in fact, there are two ladies within inside of Islam whom Islam as a whole is in debt towards. And had these two ladies not stood up within inside of these moments, number one, Islam would have been deviated from wilayah and imamat, and number two, Islam would have been totally destroyed as a whole. In one instance, we have Bibi Fatimah Al-Zahra salamullah alayha, who protected wilayah and imamat in a time where the war or the battle of narratives were seeking to change the direction of history. Today, if we have a look, whoever wins the media, whoever gains control of the media and the narrative, usually wins the battle. They will tell you that, everything in Palestine had started on October the 7th, the masses believe it, and that's the end of it. At that time also, they wanted everyone to believe that Ghadir was a thing of the past. It did not even happen in the first place. So Bibi Salamullah alayha, she had stood up at a time where the battle or the war of narratives were taking place at that time. And she had to come and redirect the traffic towards Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. And in an instance within inside of her life, she was doing the ziyarat of the qubur of the shuhada of Uhud in Baqi. And somebody had come to Bibi Salamullah alayha and asked her a question, that if Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam is on the correct side of history, if he was the one who was selected by the Rasulullah to be the Imam after him, if he was the Wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then why doesn't he raise his sword and fight against those people who are taking his place? Very interesting question posed in front of Bibi Salamullah alayha. But little did that man know that the woman that he's asking from is Sayyidatun Nisa al-Alameen. The jawab, the answer that he's going to get is also from Sayyidatun Nisa al-Alameen. Bibi Salamullah alayha looks at the man and she says, Mathalul Imam kamathalul Ka'bah idh tu'ta wa la ta'ti. That the example of the Imam is like that of the Kaaba. You have to wear ihram, you have to do all of these prerequisites and then do Hajj of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Kaaba is not going to come and surround you. Mathalul Imam kamathalul Kaaba. The misal and the example of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam is the example of that of the Kaaba. Idh tu'ta wa la ta'ti. You have to wear the wilayah, you have to wear the ihram of wilayah and surround yourselves around Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Imam is not going to come after you. Mathalul Imam kamathalul Kaaba. Bibi Salamullah alayha had fought within inside of her life. She had done jihad within inside of her life to protect this front. The second lady, whom I also mentioned, who had protected Islam from a destruction as a whole, was Bibi Zainab Salamullah alayha, Zainab al-Kubra. Allahumma salli ala. The one whom had protected Islam from being destroyed as a whole. Her khutbahs in Sham, her jihad that she had waged after Abi Abdullah alayhi salatu salam is something to be recognized. And it was all to protect the path, as-sirat. And that sirat is as-sirat wa Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu salam. Recite salawat, please. Therefore, just mentioning finally that having a stance and having a desire towards the truth in the akhir zaman is also valuable, is also an ibadat that one can have within inside of a life, that you can be submitting yourself towards the tariq, you can be having a saham for tariq, you can be a part of tariq through this ibadat as well. Speaking about desire towards oppression, desire towards the oppressor, Safwan al-Jammal, as we all probably have heard, he was at the time of Imam Qadim alayhi salam, he had a camel renting business at that time. And he had rented out some camels to Harun al-Rashid, the oppressor of the time of Imam Qadim alayhi salam. Similar to today, how you have car rental companies, he had a camel renting company at that time, a business where he would rent out camels. Imam Qadim alayhi salam had went to Safwan al-Jamal and he had asked him a question. He says that I heard you had rented out your camels to Harun al-Rashid, the zalim of your time. You gave out camels, you rented out towards them. Safwan says that Mawla, it's time for Hajj. Harun al-Rashid will probably go to the Kaaba and maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change him. Maybe he will go ahead and do islah of himself. How do we know? Maybe he'll go and change his direction from the dhulm that he's committing. It wasn't for recreational purposes. I gave him these camels so that he can go and fulfill a wajib with inside of his life. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive him. Imam Qadim alayhi salam replies a very interesting reply towards him. Imam says that, are you going to wait for Harun al-Rashid to come back and give you those camels? He says, of course I'm going to wait because those are my camels. I own them. That's my personal property. Imam alayhi salatu salam says that, do you wish that he continues to live so that he can supply you and give you back your camels? Safwan Jamal says that I would want for him to be alive and return back safely so he can return my camels to me. Imam says that that is the amount that you are associated to the dhulm of Harun al-Rashid on the day of Qiyamah. That is the amount that you will be associated on the day of Qiyamah. The amount of inclination you have, dear mu'mineen, mu'minat, towards which side. Now is the time to choose which side you are on. Now is the time to choose what side of Tariq you choose. Will you choose the side of Fatimiyah Al-Zahra, salawatullah salamu alayha? Allahumma salli. Or will you choose the side of Batil? The 12th Imam requires you to be the Malik Ashtar of his time. The 12th Imam requires you to be a good companion. Majority of those people who had surrounded the Aimma Athhar alayhimus salam throughout the ages, they had stabbed the Imams in the back, they had betrayed them, they were not loyal towards the Aimma Athhar alayhimus salam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is awaiting for a time, is awaiting for a qawm, a nation that will rise on its feet, that will be the people who are mukhlisuna haqqan, as our 4th Imam had said, as those who will be sincere towards our 12th Imam. Bibi Salamullah alayha, her duty was to protect Imamat from deviation, to protect Islam away from deviating from its original essence. And I'd like to just mention a few verses of Masa'ib over here. Ya binta Rasulillah, Ya Fatimah Al-Zahra. As we are coming to the end of the nights of Fatimiyah, we'd just like to say, Ya Zahra, this world has turned into a very difficult place for your Shi'as. Our precious personalities are leaving us one by one. The blood of your beloved Shi'a, the one whom you will open the doors of Jannah for, is being shed on the plains of this earth today. Ya binta Rasulillah, the world awaits for your Mahdi, the world awaits for your grandson who will come near the Kaaba and take your revenge. Our hearts grieve the loss of the haram of Bibi Zainab salamullah alayha today, and we do not know what the situation of our 12th Imam is today. We do not know the state of his heart, the huzn that he has within inside of himself. To one side he visits Baqi and he sees that people have abandoned his grandmother's grave, and on the other side he sees that the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt have surrounded the shrine of Bibi Zainab salamullah alayha, just how they did on the day of Ashura in Sham-e-Ghariba. My salams be upon the heart of Sahib al-Asr wal-Zaman, who is going through a very difficult and tragical moment at this time. Ya Hujjat ibn al-Hasan, allow us to give our lives for the shrine of Bibi Zainab salamullah alayha. Hazrat Zahra salamullah alayha, on a night like this, she says wida to her beloved Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam. According to our 6th Imam, the time between Maghrib and Isha was the time where Sayyida salamullah alayha had departed from this dunya, and the house of Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam was full of aza, was full of buka. But in these nights of Fatimiyah, the nights and the sadness of these nights belongs to Zainab Kubra salamullah alayha. These are the nights to give condolences to the yatim and the orphans of Ali Muhammad alayhi salatu salam who were left without a mother during these nights. It's within these nights, Allama Mir Jahani, he writes in this riwayah, he says, Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, when he had buried his wife Fatimiyah Al-Zahra, he came to the grave and he says, Ya layta ibn Abi Talib mata qabla al-yawm. Oh, how I wish the son of Abu Talib did not see this day where I had to bury my Fatima alone in the dark night. He says, Qalla ya Rasulallah an safiyatika sabri wa raqqa anha tajalludi. Ya Rasulallah, the patience of Ali has grown thin. The patience of Ali has finished and I cannot bear this difficulty. And then he says, Amma huzni fasarmadun. Ya Rasulullah, my pain is not going to finish until the day of Qiyamah. Wa amma layli famusahhadun. Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he says that I will not sleep one night after this pain that I have seen from Fatimah Al-Zahra salamullah alayha. And then Imam, he tries to give himself condolences over here near the grave of Fatima. Would you like to listen to what the Imam says? Imam says, فَبِعَيْنِ اللَّهِ تُدْفَنُ إِبْنَتُكَ سِرًّا Ya Rasulallah, I swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I had buried Zahra in the dark nights. Sallallahu alayki ya يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت رسول الله أيتها الصديقة الشهيدة. The riwayah tells us that the mother of Hasanain, on the final nights before her shahadat, she starts to feel better. Bibi Salamullahi alayha, she cleans the house, she gives clothes to Hasanain and Bibi Zainab Salamullahi alayha. Asma, she says, Alhamdulillah, Bibi is doing well. She is better than before. On that night, Bibi Salamullahi alayha, she sees a dream. She sees the Rasulullah. She says, Ya Bataya, oh my father, the Ummah has betrayed us. Look at what they have done to me. They have injured me. The Rasulullah, he says, oh my daughter Zahra, tonight you are my guest. Tonight you will come to me. Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam was in the courtyard of the house. Bibi Salamullahi alayha, she calls Ali. She says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I saw in my dream that tonight I will leave this dunya. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, he has pain inside of his heart. He says, Oh Zahra, you are leaving me. أبكي مخافة أن تطول حياتي. Oh my Zahra, I am fearful I live a long life without you. And as the days had passed by, it was the time of Maghrib. Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam was sitting in the masjid. And the riwayat states that Hasanain, they come running towards the masjid. They both were crying. Imam Hassan, he comes to his father, he says, Ya Abata, matat ummuna. Our mother has left this dunya, Ya Abata. As Amir al-Mu'mineen, he hears this news. فوقع علي على وجهه. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he stands up and he falls back down. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he starts to cry. Ali, he walks into the house and he sees that Fatima is laying towards the Qibla. There's a white cloth on her face. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he sits next to the janazah of Bibi Salamullahi alayha. May I be sacrificed for your madhlumiyya, ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. All of the Ahl Haram were surrounding Amir al-Mu'mineen and they were crying for their mother Zahra. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he places his hand on Bibi Salamullah alayha. He says, Kallamini ya Fatima. Oh my Fatima, talk to me, respond to me. أنا ابن عمك علي ابن أبي طالب. I am Ali al-Zahra, talk to me. The riwayat states فَفَتَحَتْ عَيْنَاهَا. Ali opens the eyes of Zahra. Bibi, she comes into consciousness and she says her final wasiyah. Do you want to know what the final wasiyah of Bibi is? My final verse of Masaib. She says, Abki li wa abki lil yatama. Oh Ali, cry for me and cry for my orphans. Cry for my yateems who are going to be left without a mother. She says, Ya Ali, غسلني بالليل. Oh Ali, give me ghusl in the midst of the night. Ya Ali, kaffinni billayl. Put a coffin on my body over the night. But may I be sacrificed for you, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. When he was giving ghusl to Bibi Salamullahi alayha, riwayat states that as he was giving this ghusl, he sees that the arm of Sayyidah is broken, her ribs are broken, her face is bruised. Amir al-Mu'mineen, he places his hand onto the wall. فَبَكَى بُكَاءً عَالِيًا. He starts to cry really loud. Ya Rasulallah, لَقَدْ اسْتُرْجِعَتِ الْوَدِيعَ. This amana of yours is being returned by your ummah. Sallallahu alayki ya فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. Let us all turn our hearts towards Baqi. The Baqi where is the heart of Imam al-Zaman. And let us do tawassul to Hazrat Zahra. Ya Fatimah al-Zahra, Ya bint Muhammad, Ya Qurrat Ayn al-Rasul. Inna tawajjahna wastashfa'na وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا. Any hajat that you have, place it in front of the door of Zahra. Whatever you have within inside of your life, you want your education, you want your parents to be living in this dunya and have the shifa'at of Hazrat Zahra in the akhirah. Whatever you like from this dunya, Ask from the door of Bibi and she does not reject the soil. Ya wajihatan inda Allah, ishfa'i lana inda. Everybody all together please. Ya wajihatan inda Allah, ishfa'i lana inda. One time for the faraj of our Imam. Ya wajihatan inda Allah, ishfa'i lana. One more time for the freedom of Baqi. Ya wajihatan inda Allah, ishfa'i lana inda. Allahumma kun liwalika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. الصلوات.
يا زهراء يا فاطمة، يا زهراء يا فاطمة، يا زهراء يا فاطمة، يا زهراء يا فاطمة. Come closer to me. يا زهراء يا فاطمة. One more time. يا زهراء يا فاطمة، يا فاطمة. After Muhammad, what a tragedy. After Muhammad, what a tragedy. Daughter of Muhammad was shown no mercy. Daughter of Muhammad was shown no mercy. Those who'd claim to love Rasulullah, those who'd claim to love Rasulullah, would attack the house of Fatima, would attack the house of Fatima. Ya Zahra, Ya Fatima, Ya Zahra, Ya Fatima. Voices. Ya Zahra, mashallah. Ya Fatima, Ya Fatima. So-called companions Umar and Qunfudh, so-called companions Umar and Qunfudh, together with gather fire and wood. So-called companions Umar and Qunfudh, together with gather fire and wood. betray the Prophet and anger Allah. Betray the Prophet and anger Allah. When they crush the ribs of Fatimah, when they crush the ribs of Fatimah, Ya Zahra, Ya Fatimah, Ya Zahra, Ya Fatimah, louder, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Fatimah. Her ribs were broken and her child slain. Her ribs were broken and her child slain. They wounded Zahra, mother of Hussein. They wounded Zahra, mother of Hussein. Daughter of Muhammad, lady of light. Daughter of Muhammad, the lady of light. Buried in darkness, buried at night. Buried in darkness, buried at night. Ya Zahra, Ya Fatimah, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra. Do they not fear God or Judgment Day? Do they not fear God or Judgment Day? Did they forget what Muhammad would say? Do they not fear God or Judgment Day? Did they forget what Muhammad would say? I am from her, she is from me. I am from her, she is from me. He who angers her, they anger me. He who angers her, they anger me. Ya Zahra, Ya Fatimah, Ya Zahra, Ya Fatimah, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Fatimah, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra. In our hearts there's a flame for the mother of Hussein. In our hearts there's a flame for the mother of Hussein. For the ribs and burning door, for the unborn who was slain. For the ribs and burning door, for the unborn who was slain. Assalamu alayki ya al-Hussein. Assalamu alayki ya al-Hussein. Shabab, assalamu alayki. Hussein, in our hearts there's a flame for the mother of Hussein. For the ribs and burning door, for the unborn who was slain. Your burning home, it never fades from our memory. In every breath that we take, your love is remedy. Assalamu alayki ya al-Hussein. Voices. Assalamu alayki ya al-Hussein. Assalamu. Assalamu alayki ya by the blood of Hussein, Zainab and Karbala. By the blood of Hussein, Zainab and Karbala. We will never forget those who killed you, Zahra. By the blood of Hussein, Zainab and Karbala. We will never forget those who killed you, Zahra. We make an oath to Fatima, the mother of Hussein. We will never ever forget your tragedy and pain. Assalamu alayki ya الحسين. السلام عليك حسين. السلام عليك Hussein. وشيعة of Haidar, the lovers of Hussein. وشيعة of Haidar, the lovers of Hussein. The sons of Fatima, the sons of Fatima. On God's path we remain, just like Hussein in Karbala, never to oppression. Just like Hussein in Karbala, never to oppression. We raise our heads proud and high, no to humiliation. Assalamu alayki ya al-Husayn. Assalamu alayki ya al-Husayn. Assalamu alayki ya al-Husayn. Assalamu alayki ya الحسين. يا حسين 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 يا حسين. حسين يا 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 حسين. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
متوجه زيارة. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا محمد بن عبد الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء الصديقة الطاهرة الشهيدة والمظلومة صلوات الله عليها، وعلى أقيلة بني هاشم زينب الحوراء صلوات الله عليها. والصلاة والسلام على إمامنا الحسن المجتبى المقتول بسم الجفاء، وعلى أبي عبد الله الحسين الشهيد بكربلاء، وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، العلي بن الحسين زين العابدين، ومحمد بن علي الباقر، وجعفر بن محمد الصادق، وموسى بن جعفر الكاظم، وعلي بن موسى الرضا، ومحمد بن علي الجواد، وعلي بن محمد الهادي، والحسن بن علي العسكري الزكي، السلام عليك مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد.
Brothers, just really quickly, tomorrow at Hujjat Imam Barga, 7:45, a night of tawassal for the oppressed has been arranged, and you are all requested to attend. Niyaz is to the left, so please do help yourselves.